Welcome to Electric Bike Report. My name's John. In this week's episode of the show, we're going to be talking about a Scottish startup company that's making combined motor gearbox units similar to Pinion. We'll also take a look at a beachfront bike path in the San Diego area, and we'll also discuss the pros and cons of a utility e-bike versus a cargo e-bike. But all that and more on this week's episode of the Weekly Recharge. All right, in this week's news, we'll start off with, you might notice Griffin is not here today. Griffin's actually having a baby. Well, I guess his wife is actually having a baby, but he's there doing the dad thing. So I'm running the show solo today. Let's just get into it. It's a fairly light week when it comes to news, but I do want to hit on the Scottish startup company that I mentioned earlier. That company's called Intradrive, and they're getting a prototype combined motor gearbox unit called the GD8 into some brands' hands for testing. So this is advertised to be a complete powertrain solution for premium e-bikes. That's a quote taken from their website. But basically, instead of just a mid-drive motor kind of at the bottom bracket there, this combines a motor and an internal gearbox. So the entire drivetrain is sealed there. This is a 250 watt motor that peaks at 650 watts. It has an 8-speed system with a 480% gear ratio that works with either chain or belts. And then it has near instantaneous electronic shifting. So it's actually just a tenth of a second, between shifting. And it weighs about 10 pounds, maybe a little under. So it got its start actually in 2016. The mechanical engineer who came up with this, his name is Mark Raviu, I believe I'm saying that correctly. So kind of got started with crowdfunding and then debuted this unit at Eurobike 2024. So now they've got some test models actually made that they're sending out to brands, and we're pretty excited to see this happen. Griffin and I talked at the end of last year about our predictions for 2025, and this was kind of one of those things. You know, we've tested a handful of bikes with the Pinion gearboxes. We haven't yet tried a motor gearbox combination, but there seems to be more and more brands popping up making this sort of thing. And, you know, in addition to the electronic shifting, so very rapid shifting, very crisp shifting, you also just get a naturally more maintenance-friendly experience, less maintenance required. The system is protected, so you get less wear overall. And you know, you might have to change the oil inside the unit once a year or so, but that's really about it. So again, we're really excited to see where this goes, and hopefully Intradrive gets their products out there and can actually start making production units soon. Our next story is from Blaupunkt. They have a line of NCAA licensed e-bikes that they are calling the Collegiate line. So they currently have 20 colleges online so far, and hopefully more to come. So, you know, if you're into sports, then that is definitely something you might want to check out. The company president, whose name is Brian Tedesco, said, quote, "The fact that the bikes are UL 2849 rated was key to getting the license, as colleges are concerned about students bringing unsafe e-bikes into dorms. Blaupunkt plans to make use of the NCAA's new name, image, and likeness policy to pay college athlete ambassadors to be seen around campus on the bikes." So these are folding bikes. They're, you know, pretty cool design. Don't have a ton of details there, but we do know that Blaupunkt is one of the brands that's going to be headed to those Pedigo stores that we talked about recently, where they're doing collaborations with other brands. So, you know, personally, not super into sports, but if that's your jam and you do want to represent your team, this definitely might appeal to you. And I think it's cool to see some custom branding and colors that you don't normally find on e-bikes. So, you know, check that out. We'll leave links down in the description, but that does it for this week's news. All right, now let's take a look at some of the things we have currently in testing and the recent reviews that have gone live. This is another fairly light week. We have gotten some more bikes in. Unfortunately, like the past couple of weeks, they are under embargo, so we can't share any details yet. We're excited, we're running them through the testing process, but we can't really share anything about that. So do make sure you're subscribed, do stay tuned. If you're excited about what's coming out this year, you'll want to find out about these bikes. They're very cool, they're really good so far. You know, we have our fingers crossed that that trend keeps going. But let's see. Outside of Griffin being gone for a week or two, we'll see. He is in the middle of doing a review on the Specialized Turbo Levo Gen 3. So he left a note in here for me actually about, is this about to become the best deal in EMTBs? We'll see, and hope to get that live soon. But I had a review go live, and that was the Aventon Sinch 2.5. So that was sort of a light refresh on Aventon's folding e-bike. So they added a new display, a little bit of a different feel with the programming and the torque sensor there, and then a suspension seat post for added comfort. So if you haven't checked that out, make sure you take a look at that. But that should do it for this week. Let's keep things moving. All right, every week we like to highlight a specific location with great e-bike infrastructure or a specific trail or trail system. So this week, just, everybody's dealing with the winter blues and some nasty winter weather out there. So I wanted to go to a great vacation destination, and this is the Bayshore Bikeway in San Diego, California. So this is a 24-mile route that consists of a mixture of paved bike paths and a few on-street segments. Some of those include bike lanes, but not all of them do, so do keep that in mind. But this route nearly encircles the entirety of San Diego Bay. So there's start and end points both at the Coronado Ferry Center on Coronado Island and at the Broadway Pier near the Port of San Diego cruise ship terminal. So if you are taking a cruise at any point this year, you can hop over there and rent a bike or hop on the ferry. So the west side of the route, which is on the Coronado side, that has more of the relaxed bike paths away from traffic. The east side is the downtown side where there is going to be more vehicle traffic there. So again, keep that in mind. You may want to split that up and only do part of the route. But between those endpoints, you have quite a few points of interest. There's the Coronado Ferry Landing Park that has bike rental shops and some restaurants and restrooms, that sort of thing. There are views of the Coronado Bay Bridge. You have the Hotel del Coronado, which was it's a historic site that was built in 1888. It's been highlighted in a few films. And then you have great beach views with the Silver Strand State Beach. We'll throw up some images on screen there. But then you also have the San Diego Bay National Wildlife Refuge, which is it takes up a big chunk of the southern part of the bay. That's a wetlands area that provides some habitat for fish, birds, and coastal salt marsh plants. And then the path also connects with a few other paths, including the 2.2-mile Sweetwater Bikeway that runs along the Sweetwater River. So you have a few other side paths you can check out. There's also shopping, other restaurants, coffee shops, breweries, all kinds of stuff there. And of course, just some great salt air and scenery. So if you also plan your trip in August, if you hold off a little while, you can also ride over the Coronado Bay Bridge in the Bike the Bay ride event. So that's the only time of year that you can ride your bike across the bridge. Otherwise, you're limited to those other areas. And then to touch on the history, that's something I always like to include here. So construction on the path started in 1976 with the widening of the Choyas Creek Bridge on Harbor Drive. And then after that, there was a committee that was formed in 1977 that helped to get additional funding. By 1983, they had $1.5 million that was spent to convert unused segments of railroad into this path. And there was another committee later formed in 1989 called the Bayshore Bikeway Working Group. And that was made up of elected positions from each of the communities that the bike lane passes through. So just passionate cyclists kind of getting together and making sure that this happens. So, it's been there for quite a while and been growing for quite a while. Again, if you're, looking for a great destination this year, keep this one in mind. All right, now let's take a look at some of the questions and comments that we've had over the past week from our audience. We take questions and comments both from YouTube and our website, as well as our email address, which is questions@electricbikereport.com. So if you do have something you'd like to ask, you can send it to us there. But starting things off, we have one from Drake Bunch 9807. This was on last week's episode of the show. This person said, "Do you guys think Utah will create silly e-bike laws? With all these laws and potential laws, I almost feel like e-bikes will certainly change in the future. I feel like if you want a powerful one, you need to buy it ASAP." Interesting point there, yeah. So we definitely do think there will continue to be more laws. Utah in particular, we'll see, but all states seem to be kind of doing things a little bit differently. But once one state does pass a law, that sets a precedent that allows or possibly encourages other states to kind of follow suit. So, we're not anti-legislation, but we do take the position that we would like the legislation to be smart. So, cracking down on overpowered e-bikes that have pedals just so that they can be called e-bikes, but, they are a little bit outrageous in terms of speed and power, yeah, we're in favor of maybe cracking down on those things, just in favor of safety. But, we've definitely reported on some things over the past few weeks, like Oregon in particular, where legislators don't seem to be necessarily listening to advocacy groups, and those who really ride and use e-bikes regularly. And so those laws have the potential to kind of hurt the industry as a whole. So, in favor of that, we're not in favor of that. And we hope that legislators do kind of pay a little bit more attention to those of us who advocate for use. All right, next up we have one from Rebecca Barnett C8J. This was also on last week's episode of the show. Rebecca says, I just bought the Admotor City Tri E310 Standard. I'm 4'11" and really wanted the Mini. I just found out it has been discontinued. I'm wondering if that's because of the new laws. Also, I'm hoping you may have suggestions to help me fit the Standard. I'm 5'1", 5'1" is not much taller, and I've always had bikes that are too big, so I'm hoping no issue with that. Just wondering if you've heard any workaround for us vertically challenged women. Excellent question, and we've actually had a similar question a few weeks ago, so definitely have a few notes to send your way. We haven't tested any e-bikes or e-trikes from Admotor, so since we don't have that one here, I couldn't really get any measurements to kind of guide you there, but I do have a few thoughts. So since there's only a few inches of height difference between you and sort of the low end recommended range on that specific model, well, you're probably gonna be okay. You might have to stretch a little bit to get to the pedals. And if you do, you can look at getting a set of pedal blocks to kind of raise the surface of the pedals to match your feet. But you should definitely be okay for throttling around. That said, we might steer you in a different direction, if you get that and it doesn't work for you. If you do end up not being satisfied and sending that back, you might want to consider the Rad Power Bikes Rad Trike or the XP Trike from Lectric. So both of those actually have height ranges that go below 5 foot, so they would be a little bit more suited to that. And we recommend those mostly because of their safety factor. So the Admotor that it looks like you bought there has a 750 watt motor, so it's pretty powerful, and it has a 20 mile per hour top speed. We generally feel like that's a little bit on the high end for a trike, where really stability and balance are essential, and they have some different handling characteristics that we do just prefer. The sort of 14 mile per hour speed limit that the Rad Trike and the XP Trike are limited to. So again, may want to consider other options in the future. I do hope you like your purchase, and hopefully the recommendations that we have there help you out. But again, a couple other things to keep in mind. All right, keeping things moving. Next up, we have a question from Andy. This was on the Globe Haul LT review that was on our website. Andy said, if I could get your opinion, if you were going to be commuting around 24 miles round trip, do you think the Globe Haul LT would perform much differently than the ST version? I'm leaning toward the ST, but with such great stats on the LT version, I'm considering just getting the extra space. Excellent question. Bottom line, both of those bikes are extremely similar, and I'll take a look at some of the performance data here, which lines up very well. The ST and LT have nearly identical hill test results. I believe that's 1 or 2 seconds of difference there. So both are great climbers. They both did a great job in the brake test. The ST result was a couple feet shorter, but both were well below average for the utility and cargo bike categories. And then both had very similar results in the high power range test. The LT did way better on the low power range test, but if you are carrying cargo or a passenger, we don't think you're gonna tend to rely on that low power level. So, neck and neck if you are using a higher power level there. So in terms of feel, that's almost identical as well. Both bikes have a very powerful motor and a super responsive torque sensor. And so, you do kind of need to get the feel of that dialed in, but kind of once you get that motor engaged, it's gonna keep you moving without really much effort at all. In terms of how the bikes feel to ride, the handling characteristics, the ST does feel a bit more nimble. It's got a shorter wheelbase, so it feels a little bit more like a regular bike, while on the LT that has the longer wheelbase, so you do kind of feel that length when you're steering, but overall it is still fairly nimble. So bottom line here is, if you want a bike that kind of feels and handles a little bit more like a regular size bike, you might want to go with the ST. But if you are planning to take advantage of the longer cargo rack and that added space, take advantage of the LT there. All right, next up we have, let's see, a question from Nevermind932 on the Sinch 2.5 review that came out recently. So this person said, on the range test, do you folks keep riding the e-bike after the battery dies? Aloha from Makaha, Hawaii. Aloha to you too. Thanks for writing in again. So for the purposes of data collection, no, we do not keep riding after the battery dies. We use Strava to track our results when we're on range tests. So as soon as the battery or the bike shuts down or the power level drops to a place where we don't really feel it's like helpful or practical anymore, we will stop Strava at that point. But with that in mind, yeah, we often do kind of have to ride a couple miles back to the office. But again, for the purposes of data collection, no, what you see is based on what the battery can do. All right, and then to round things out, our last question, it comes from Motor Tiger 05. This was also on the Sinch 2.5 review. This question says, I'd like to see a comparison with the 1,000-watt Heybike Ranger S. That's what I'm shopping. When you quote the weight, do you actually put the bike on a scale? So I'll answer the last question first. Yes, we do weigh every bike that we get in, both with and without its battery. So in our written reviews, we will report the advertised and tested weight of the bike. And then in the YouTube reviews, I personally tend to just stick with what showed up on our scale. But then to kind of go back to that comparison, we have actually tested the 750 watt version of the Ranger S, so be sure to check that review out if you haven't seen it. But we haven't tested the 1,000 watt motor version. So I'll kind of run you through the test data and stuff for the version that we tested, but there will be some differences there naturally. When it comes to design, function, weight, both are pretty similar. The Sinch 2.5 weighs 73 pounds, the Ranger S was 72. So they're both fairly heavy for folding e-bikes. They both have essentially the same folding pedals, a hinged frame, a collapsible stem. So their overall folding features and their portability factor are pretty much neck and neck there. When it comes to speed, the Sinch 2.5 tops out at 25 miles per hour, while the Ranger S could reach all the way up to the Class 3 maximum of 28 miles per hour. And we'd expect the 1,000 watt motor version to have a little bit faster acceleration overall, just because it is more powerful. In the range department, the Sinch 2.5 kind of blew the Ranger S out of the water though. So we got roughly 35 and 56 miles in our two range tests. And then with the 750 watt Ranger S, we got 18 and 42 miles. But the 1,000 watt version has the same size battery, that's 672 watt hours. So because it has a more powerful motor, we would actually expect less range than the 750 watt version there. So, if range is a concern and you do want more mileage, we do recommend the Sinch 2.5 there. Hill climbing ability is a little bit hard to comment on. So the 750 watt Ranger S is actually one of only a handful of e-bikes that we have tested with 750 watt motors that wasn't able to throttle up hellhole in our hill test. So, definitely something to consider there. We would expect the 1,000 watt motor version to do a little bit better, but at least comparing, the ones we tested, both bikes had very similar pedal test results. So there were only a couple of seconds difference there. Both bikes are pretty capable when you're pedaling. Ride feel though, so that's gonna be kind of the area where the bikes differ the most. The Ranger S has a cadence sensor and it has a fairly limited gearing range. So we felt that really didn't support the Class 3 speed capability. We ended up ghost pedaling a lot, which is fine if you prefer a more relaxed experience. But if you want something a little bit more engaging and active, you might want to go with the Sinch 2.5 because of its torque sensor. That just feels a little bit more like a regular bike. So if that appeals to you, we recommend going that route. But then also we found the Sinch a little bit more comfortable overall because it does include a suspension seat post. So that does it for our questions this week. Again, if you have any you'd like to throw our way, be sure to leave those down in the comments section or email us. You can also hit us up on our website, electricbikereport.com. All right, it's time for Deals of the Week. Deals of the Week. A little out of tune maybe, I needed Griffin to back me up. But anyway, we got some good stuff going on here this week. So Rad Power Bikes has the entire Rad Runner line on sale. So it seems like they're trying to clear some stuff out. All three models that they have are $500 off. So the Rad Runner 2 starts at just $999. That's a killer bike that we highly recommend if you're looking for something great that's highly functional and you don't want to spend a lot. Even before the sale price, it was a good recommendation. But $9.99. That's kind of crazy. The Rad Runner Plus that comes with some extra accessories there. That's $12.99. And then if you want something that maybe looks a little sharper, a little bit more modern, we might want to recommend the Rad Runner 3 Plus. That is on sale for $17.99. And just with all the accessories that Rad offers, I don't remember the specific number, but there's a ridiculous number of combinations of accessories. You can really do just about anything with that bike, including carrying passengers. But also, Heybike has a flash sale going on. So the Hauler, which is their cargo bike that we reviewed, is on sale for $11.99 for the single battery version and $13.99 for the dual battery version. The Ranger S that we talked about earlier, the 750 watt model, is on sale for $10.99, and you can get the 1000 watt version for $12.99. So that's great if you're looking for a folding bike with lots of power. And then the Mars 2.0, which is a different folding option, is on sale for just $8.99. So that's pretty much a steal. We don't often find e-bikes below $1,000 that we recommend. So if you're looking for, a great entry point, that might be one to consider. We really appreciate all of you who watch our show. So each week we choose one of you to highlight. So this week we have Jay Kean 5813 who commented on last week's episode of the show, kind of in response to some of the discussion about legislation that we covered. This person said, I had a moped in the late 70s. A lot of young men did at that time when gas was $1.30 and sometimes hard to get. It had pedals to get the engine going, and so I really liked using it. By around 1982, with stunning rapidity, they had almost 100% disappeared from the road. The fact that gas had come down in price was a factor, but the main reason was California implemented a registration and insurance requirement. I abandoned my Vespa to rust in the backyard and focused on riding my regular bicycle and sometimes driving. I knew that something similar was inevitable to happen for e-bikes based on this example, and actually sort of surprised it's taken this long for the legislative discussions to start. Very insightful comment there. I think we're all in favor of fewer limitations, especially when it comes to licensing and registration. Really don't want e-bikes to go the route of your Vespa. Thanks for sharing your experience. Anybody that feels the same, we definitely always encourage you to write into your legislators and express your opinion, speak up. That's the only way that we can kind of fight back against the system a little bit when things are being put in place that kind of conflict with our interests and the industry itself. But Jay, again, thank you for writing in. And if you want to be highlighted in this segment, make sure you reach out to us down in the comments section or at questions@electricbikereport.com. All right, if you've made it this far, I definitely appreciate you sticking around. We look forward to welcoming Griffin back in the next couple of weeks here once he's done with his dad duties. But hey, if you want to send us your questions and feedback, hit us up down in the comments section. You can also email us directly at questions@electricbikereport.com. We'd love to highlight you. We'd love to answer your questions. And also, let us know what bike you're riding and what you do with it. Make sure you hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. But that does it for this week. We'll catch you next week in the Weekly Recharge.